Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. And yourself?
I'm fine. I don't know if I need my headphones or not.
You maybe want to check the difference between having them on or.
Yeah, maybe I should have them on.
Okay, cool. So, can you pronounce your full name like clearly? I know it's like Gretchen
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
the family name is McCullough.
McCullough.
It's an
Okay,
Irish
got
name.
that.
Yeah, it looks strange, Ough, but it's McCullough.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So, you were born in the States, you reside in Egypt, and you got an Irish background.
Yeah, well, a lot of Americans have Irish background, but my family came to the U.S. like 250 years ago or something. So it's not recent immigration.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm picking up a bit of latency. Are you hearing me in real time?
Yeah.
You're good on that. Okay, maybe it's just the video where the latency is at the moment. But thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you here on the pod. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Personally, for me, why this conversation is going to be interesting um, is because I've always been fascinated about Egypt and Egyptian history. So I'm sure I'm going to gather a lot of information from you as we proceed with the podcast, and then of course, chatting about your book. So that's going to be quite cool. I remember when I was a kid, like I was obsessed with Egypt for some reason. I was obsessed. And it came after, do you know the Mummy series?
I'm not sure which mummy series.
The movie The Mummy, and then there was The Mummy Returns, and then there
Oh, right.
was
Yeah, no, I know about
The Mummy
that. Yeah.
something else and
Mm.
something else. Yeah, it was after that, like I was obsessed with Egyptian history. Like till today, like I'm still obsessed about it. It's a culture that absolutely fascinates me.
It's a very interesting place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm sure I'm gonna gather a lot from that. So what I love to do is I love to go back to like day one. So you were born in the States, you were born in Texas, you relocated to Egypt, you taught in Egypt amongst other countries. So how did that all happen to you? Like how did it all start and what made you make that decision to actually relocate?
I came to Egypt the first time in 1985. I had a teaching job. It was a volunteer teaching job in Cairo. And I was here for 2 years. And then I had many other teaching jobs. And then I got my MFA in creative writing. In 97 and 99, 97 to 99, I went to Syria for 2 years. And then I went back to the US, and a friend said, Gretchen at American University in Cairo is looking for teachers with all of your experience. I think you would be great. So
Yeah.
I came in 2000. So I had lots of other jobs. But the first time I came in 85, in 1985. So, yeah, and I didn't expect to stay so long, but I've been here for 24 years this time.
Wow. And how's it been, over the last 24 years for you? So you would
Uh,
consider like Egypt like home for you?
oh yeah, and my husband is Egyptian, so yes, I feel
Okay.
home. I feel at home here, definitely. There's been a lot of changes since I've been here. I also was here during the 2011 uprising and all the things that happened after that. So seen a lot of change in Egypt, and also at the university. We used to be downtown, and now we're like on the edge of Cairo. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
changed a lot.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I'm not a jealous person, but I think I should be jealous right now.
Well, South Africa sounds like it's an interesting place. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. No, it's like on the to-do list. Like, you have to go to Egypt one day. Like, it's just like a calling for me. Like, I'm just, as I said, like, I'm just so intrigued, like, all about it and so on.
It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic city. I mean, modern Egypt is. I mean, of course, there's so many things to see, but also, modern Egypt is extremely dynamic and spontaneous. It's a very spontaneous city. Almost anything can happen, and you can meet almost anybody. People are very open here.
Yeah. So, like, just throwing it out there. So I'm sure you've done like plenty of research from ancient Egypt, and then you do the comparison to modern Egyptian culture. Um, how would you differentiate that? Like, has a lot changed? Is there still certain traditions as far as spirituality is concerned, as far as how do we worship in Egypt in modern times?
Well, I mean, of course, they're the pharaonic monuments in Egypt, and people are influenced, I think, in some sense by some pharaonic customs that maybe don't exist in other Arab countries. And also, Egyptians have such a long history; they consider themselves Egyptians more than Arabs. So,
Yeah.
if you think about the pharaohs, and then of course there was the Christians, and then there was the Muslim invasion. So, it's a very long civilization, and it has a very long history. So, it's different than a lot of Arab countries that maybe I'm talking about the Gulf Arab countries where they're new countries. So Egypt has been occupied. Egypt was occupied by the French, by the English, by the Turks. So they've had lots of interaction with other cultures. So I mean, maybe that's part of what makes it interesting as well. But Egyptians have their own way of doing things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, it's good to know. It's good to know. So, onto your artistic career as a writer. So, how long have you been writing, or when was your first book ever published?
My first book was a book called Three Stories from Cairo, and it was three stories in English, and then you flip it, and it's three stories in Arabic, and it was published here, and it was a small press, and so it's a bilingual book of short stories. And then I published a book called Shahrazad's Tooth, which was about expatriates in Cairo, and that was in 2013. And then I have published a novel in 2022 in the U.S. With a publisher called Kuhn Press. And Kuhn Press also republished Shahrazad's Tooth, and it's called Shahrazad's Gift. So that's the one here.
That's your latest one that's out.
That's the latest one. It's called Shahrazad's Gift, and it's a reprint of the one I published here. And those stories were inspired by a building that I lived in central Cairo, and all the crazy things that happened in that building.
Yeah, so let's touch on that. Let's touch on that on the short stories, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Within the book itself, within the apartment itself, the characters, how did it all come about, like the whole composition of it. So are all the short stories based on your own writing, or is there various like other authors also involved?
No, they were most of the short stories are inspired by people that I met, but then I used it as a springboard for fiction. So, for example, I had a Japanese neighbor who was studying Arabic, and she was convinced that somebody was spying on her upstairs, and I sort of had the idea, well, what if there were people in the empty flat upstairs? And in Cairo, almost everybody has access to an empty flat. So, and they're not, and they use these empty flats for different kinds of activities. So that inspired that particular story. So some of the stories were inspired by people that I met, but then my imagination, I elaborated and I sort of imagined scenarios from those things. And so, for example, this woman that I knew in real life, she was Japanese and she was learning Arabic, and her Arabic was quite good, but she couldn't. So there was a gap between understanding. I mean, she understood the language, but then there were things about the daily life and the culture that she couldn't accept. So that kind of interested me. That how could somebody be fluent in a language but still not be able to, pivot on a cultural level? So that's what I was interested in sort of exploring in that particular story.
And what did you conclude with that?
Well,
like why she couldn't pivot?
She couldn't pivot. In the story, she ends up going back to Japan. So people Cairo is kind of a crazy place. So if you don't accept these sort of paradoxes of life here, you either go crazy or you leave, or you end up loving it. So it's a very complicated city. And I think people who like the unexpected or the wacky or the quirky, they might flourish in Cairo. But if people are insisting on routine and regularity and certainty, they won't like the place.
I guess, worldwide, wherever you relocate, you have to adapt. And for some, it's very hard to adapt to a certain or a different way of life because you're so stuck in your own, routine. Just off topic, I had a conversation, but it wasn't on the podcast. It was actually someone here in South Africa that I came across who was talking about, someone was from Bangladesh, and sorry, it was actually India. So apparently in India, you start work at 10 and then you end at 10 p.m. And it's actually one of the big companies here in South Africa. So the guys come here, but they're still used to that routine of starting at 10, where in South Africa, if you report into duty, you're reporting at 8. So for some of them, they've been battling with actually fitting in with changing that routine from 10 to 10 to 8 to 5. So, at the end of the day, some can make it, some adapt, and some just, like in your story, she went back to Japan, some go back to India.
Yeah. That's the hard thing about living in another culture. You really have to adapt, and it may not be, if it goes against your personality, then you might not be able to pivot. You have to be, and people always talk about flexibility, but then when it's tested, then you think, oh, I'm not as flexible as I thought I was. So, I mean, there are certain things that people don't like, in Egypt, things are very, things get canceled a lot, So if you're somebody who's insisting on having a certain routine all the time, daily, then not the place for you. But other wonderful things happen, and when things are canceled. So you might meet somebody you never met before. So So, for example, the other day I met somebody when I got off the bus from school that I haven't seen for like maybe 7 or 8 years. We looked at each other and said, she's Egyptian. She said, oh, I know you. And she said, yes, I know you too. And, she said, would you like to go have a cup of coffee? I was on my way home from school, from the university, and I thought, well, why not? It was in my neighborhood. And so we just spontaneously went and had a cup of coffee. A lot of times people in other places, everything's very strictly scheduled, but that's a kind of magical moment. And we had a great, and I don't know if I'll see her again, but we had a great conversation. We sat there and had a coffee together, and we had a mutual friend or whatever. So that's an example of the kind of stuff that happens in Egypt, because people go with a moment. And I think that's a real gift. Because we're.
No, you got this one, or in this life at least, you got this one opportunity to live it without being spontaneous in any way or form. It's like quite boring. If you were to ask me, it's quite boring. I look at, my podcast itself. So like I run 2 podcasts, like this is my own podcast and I'm a co-host on another podcast. And like I'm spontaneous with that as well. I come from a musical background, I'm involved in the music industry. And when I got the opportunity to start interacting and having conversations with authors, I never think twice about it, because I want to interact with all sorts of creators and get their opinions, from a different niche, from a different industry that's still involved in, entertainment. But it's just, it enlightens me, it educates me as well as listeners. And to get different views and points of views from different people all around the world. That's how for me personally, like if you're an ambitious somebody and you want to grow your career, that's how you actually going to do it. But if you're going to remain in your comfort zone, and not saying there's anything wrong with being an introvert, but you're not really going to get growth. And for me, life just tends to be like, boring. You need to learn to adapt, whether it's moving to another country or bringing someone in on a podcast that's from a different industry. It's always good to be spontaneous, because you never know what you could learn and who you could meet. And we find ourselves in certain positions, certain places, exactly where the universe wants us to be for specific reasons. So that's my take on it.
That's interesting. For a writer, in a way, living in Cairo is like improvisation, like if you want to compare it to music. Because as I was just saying, I always say to my students, you live in an amazing city because everyone tells stories here. People you don't even know, like you meet somebody in a cab and they'll start telling you a story and they look at me like I'm retarded. But for a writer, it's great because people tell you stuff and that's where you get the stories, is oral storytelling. So you were talking about, as a musician, in a way, it's like living in a city, which is improv. I never thought of it that way until you just talked about like cross pollination of why you're interested in, meeting other people who are creative. But for me, because there are some disadvantages of living in Cairo. I'm outside of the English-speaking world. I do speak Arabic, but there's disadvantages in terms of not being close to people who are connected to the publishing world, in the U.S. But in terms of making something or coming up with ideas, it's a very fruitful place for me as a writer.
Yeah, I guess as a creator, you need to find that place, wherever it may be, that brings out, your true artistic potential. Sometimes you could be so stuck, but the reason could be because of your environment itself. And I guess that works for any form of creator. I look at mainstream artists these days. When they're working on a new album, they would go to Europe, for example, for a month just to work on their new album, because that's where their true, artistic potential actually comes out, where they feel comfortable doing it and they bring out the best in themselves. And living in this day and age, you could live any corner of the world that really brings out your true potential and still publish your work all over the world, still get in front of audiences, even though you're based in a different country. And it's amazing. It's great what you can do these days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because of the internet. That's absolutely true. I mean,
Yeah.
also people, yeah, exactly. As you said, I mean, there's a place, I mean, when I feel that I need to get away because Cairo is a very noisy city, I go to Ireland and I go to an artist community there, and I meet lots of artists, and people are painting or making music or writing, and it's great to be around other people who are creative. And in that place, it's quiet and it's beautiful. So it's another, it's another great place to work. So people have to figure out, the best place for them to work.
Yeah. 100%. That's how it is. So, how many short stories exactly can listeners find, like, in your book? So, okay, before you answer that, the name itself, like, how did that come about?
Well, the name is called Shahrazad's Gift, and or the first one was Shahrazad's Tooth, but Shahrazad is from 1001 Nights, and it's based on the Arabian Nights short stories. And the Arabian Nights short stories basically are tales, Arabian tales, and every night Shahrazad had to tell the king a story, or a virgin would be killed, a woman would be killed the next day. So there was a lot of pressure for her to tell a good story to try to entertain the king. So I had the idea of, because many of the stories here are oral storytelling, I just had the idea that the stories are from the tradition of 1001 Nights. People are telling stories. So that's why my publisher in the US said, let's call it Shahrazad's Gift. But it was originally called Shahrazad's Tooth because I had a American journalist who was telling stories to her dentist. And so she was telling her stories about being a journalist in Lebanon and during the Civil War. So that's why that story was called Shahrazad's Tooth. And she thought they were going to have a romance, but actually it didn't work that way. In the story, he's a good listener, but it doesn't go beyond listening to her story. So that's the reason for the title.
Okay. So then on to the question. So how many short stories, are currently in the book itself?
Oh, I never counted them. I've got my book here.
That's how much it is.
I've got about 11 stories in the book. Yeah.
Okay, so from a publishing point of view, my own personal interest. So you have a publisher that's based in the US. How's the publishing scene in Egypt?
Well, I did publish two books here, and with a very small publisher, and a lot of writers often pay to get their books published here, but what's the publishing scene like? I would say it's not as competitive. It's not as competitive. Yeah. I mean, and if people pay, they can probably get their books published. I mean, I got a grant from the university, and with the grant that I got from the university, we paid for my first 2 books. But the last 2 were Kuhn Press out of Seattle, and they published my books. I did not. It was not a vanity press.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the way it's become now, where you can do so many things independently, whether you are independent music artist or an independent author, but as you said, you have to pay for it yourself. So each road that you actually take, has its pros and cons. You can go via a publisher, cool, but at the end of the day, is they always going to take their share, of the pie itself, or you take the independent road, you self-fund yourself, and all comes to you. And I know you get, like, I spoke to the head of a publishing company it was about 2 weeks ago, when he was explaining, the breakdown of the 3 different deals that you get these days. So which works better for you? Like, I mean, your first 2 books, okay, it was, published, you got the grant, you paid for it yourself. Now with your latest one, it's gone through a publisher within the US. Which one do you prefer more?
Which one we did that. Yeah, no, look, we did the little press, the small presses in Cairo, because I tried a lot to try to get publishers, and getting an agent in the US is extremely difficult. And the publisher that I have I would say had, because he died, at Kuhn Press, he was a publisher, and he was publishing people who were writing about the Middle East. So it was great, because I never met him, but I had a very close relationship with him, and he was very enthusiastic about my work. But one of the downsides of having an independent publisher is that you have to do a lot of the promotion yourself.
Yeah.
And as you know, that's a lot of work. So, I mean, it is good because I have a publisher in the US, and they are distributing my book, and it's on Amazon. And so that's very good. And when I had the books published in Egypt, they were mostly available in the Middle East, but not so much around the world. So my books, the ones that were published with Kuhn, are available in ebook or Kindle, and I, they're widely distributed. So that's an advantage. But I think promotion, is an issue. From my point of view, I mean, I'm glad I've found a publisher. I did find a publisher, but now I'm looking for a new one, because Scott Davis, who was the publisher, died suddenly, and his wife Mary Davis decided to publish the book of short stories, because Scott promised to. But the new book that I have has nothing to do with Egypt, so and I need a new publisher, and and it's mostly focused in Texas, so it wouldn't be of interest. Anyway, they're not publishing any more books, so I find myself now in a way starting from scratch again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since you've already published, so many books already, and you've established yourself, within the industry itself, I don't see it being too hard for you. And even if it does become hard, and for whatever reason it may be that you don't find a publisher, for you to navigate, your new book independently, also don't see that being tough, versus an up and coming author who isn't established or isn't known as yet. you could also make it work for you as well, because you by now already probably know, the ins and outs of the publishing business itself, besides just being like, an author.
I don't think I have the magic secret. I really don't. I mean, I do think that it helps going to conferences, and I'm planning to go to some conferences. Meeting people face to face, there's just no substitute for it. And you can write all the emails you want, but meeting people, I think, makes a difference. I do see the advantages of having an agent, because I'm a university teacher, and I have a lot of details, and I just can't devote all of my energy to I am sending out my book now to a lot of independent publishers, but there's a limit to how many independent publishers there are actually in the US. When you start looking, they're like, oh, that one publishes only this kind of people, and this one only publishes that kind of people, and that I don't fit into any of these categories. So in the end, there are not that many independents, and some people like to publish themselves, but I'm kind of hesitant to do that. I'm not interested in, because it's been hard enough, doing with independents, but I don't necessarily want to self-publish.
Yeah. Nah, I mean, everybody, has their preferred taste. It's either going to be tea or it's either going to be coffee. But I get where you're coming from. Given that you're teaching, and of course, you love teaching, you love what you do, you love writing as well, and you want to leave the administration, of your work, in the hands of someone else who can actually deal with it. I mean, look at us now being on a podcast. If you didn't have someone to actually, do those things for you, we wouldn't be having a chat right now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, other people finding opportunities for you, all of that takes a lot of time, and I spent a lot of time trying to do those sort of things before, and for all of the contacts that you make, not everybody is receptive. So and then you also have to organize when you're going to meet people. So yeah, you're right. It's a lot of work, and we're all limited in terms of our energy.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, it works the same. I mean, that's why, I got into actually, chatting with authors, because I did see the similarity from the business point of view between, a musician and a writer. It's the same challenges, whether you're doing it independently or whether you're going through a publishing company. Because as a musician as well, if you're going through either a record label to record your single or your album, but you also need a publisher as well. So you face the same challenges. Do it myself, or should I find a publishing company? For myself personally, with my personal career and with my record label and the artists that I'm associated with and clients that I have under my agency, it comes down to just as you said, that they don't want to actually do the hard work. They want to get in studio, they want to do the production, and they want someone else to handle, the rest for them. For myself personally, I chose to go down the independent road. I set up my own my own record label, plus registered myself as a publisher. And the distribution, anyone can do that these days for $5. So I decided to do it independently. I guess for me, it was more it starts and ends with me. That's the road I took. That was my mentality. But I guess, I'm not a teacher. If I was the teacher, of course, maybe I would have the same mindset as you. Let me get someone else to do it. It's cool, but I get, it is what it is, one road works for one road works for another. But I really do hope that you do find another publishing company, for your new book that's coming. Also, when are you planning Of course, I know you need to find a publishing company first, but when were you ideally planning to get this book out to market?
Well, that depends on if I haven't been sending it out. That I just started sending it out in August, so this is very early days, really. I mean, it took me 5 years to find Kuhn Press, so I'm philosophical. So yeah, I know I have to go to some conferences, and the personal contacts I think are important. And I have some ideas, and I have sent my work out to some other independents, but yeah, publishing fiction is really tough. It's not easy. A lot of people are writing fiction. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna give. I actually forgot. I'm not sure if you've heard of John Goodwin from the States. Have you heard of him?
No.
I'm actually gonna. You just give me a second. When you things at the top of your mind, and then you just and I mean, this is what connecting and can't really get the name of that. Just give me a second, because he's the head of a publishing company, and I've completely forgotten the name, which is so easy. But you can also reach out to him and maybe get some thoughts, whether he would be interested in it. Galaxy Press. That's the name of his publishing company, Galaxy Press. So even if you go on to if you go onto my podcast, you can go down to the episode with John Goodwin. You can just scroll through it. So what he does, he focuses on sci-fi and fantasy, and he also does short stories, and he has this global competition. So it's done every quarter. You submit your short story, or you submit your illustration, and if you win the competition, I know there's $1,000 winning prize, plus they also fly you out to Hollywood for a 1-week workshop, all expenses paid. So it's quite cool what he's doing, at Galaxy Press. So you can listen to the episode, it's still there, it's online, and you can listen to what he has to say about the competition itself. And there is a contact, so you can reach out to him and say that you've also had a conversation with me, and you've heard about what he's doing, and that I actually said to reach out to him, and maybe he can direct you on where to go. Maybe he knows someone who would be interested in your book if he is not interested in the book itself.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he doesn't sound like he's the right audience for the book, but he might be well connected.
Yeah, but maybe he'll know someone. Maybe he'll know someone. Yeah. And that's what I love about this digital age, with podcasts as well, is because you never know who I could have chatted to, or you could have chatted to. They can actually assist with whatever challenge maybe on the table at the moment. So till date, he's the only head of a publishing company that I've actually interviewed. The rest have all been authors. So he's the only one that I can really advise to say, okay, for my part, some sort of assistance to you, to say, reach out. Maybe he knows someone who will be interested in your book, who has that audience. You never know until you try. What I tell a lot of people, the worst that could happen is, no, I'm not interested, or I don't know anyone. But he's quite a cool guy, and he's chill, He's a phenomenal person. Yeah, he's not one of those guys that, you're going to send you're going to reach out to him, and he's going to be I'm going to ignore it, or whatever, not interested, sorry, He'll be someone, who will actually have a look, okay, is this what it was about? Okay, I don't do this, but I may know someone. And, never know. So you could say that I actually recommended him for a bit of advice. And who knows? You just never know. Never know.
Yeah, no, I follow up lots of leads. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So you
sometimes
said
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. No, sorry. You can continue.
No, I was just going to say I found my publisher, Scott Davis, through a contact that I had because I had a Fulbright in Syria, and one of my friends, one of my colleagues from the university in Syria, published something with him, and he introduced me to my publisher. So yeah, these sort of things can happen.
Yeah, you never know. It's like what I said about the universe. Like it brings you in contact with people for like a much more bigger reason.
Mm.
You meet someone, like sometimes some in life, like you meet someone or you get into a conversation with a complete stranger, like as you were saying, the lady that set over randomly from the same area, but you just never know where that conversation is going to lead next.
That's right.
Lead,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've experienced that for myself, like it works magically. You just have to be willing to actually like say, okay, let me just like give it a shot. Let me see what happens.
Yeah. It's about continuing to be open. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, so okay, so like with the new book, it's has nothing to do with Egypt. So, do you want to share on the podcast, like?
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, it's about in the 1930s in the United States, we had something called the New Deal because it was the Depression and nobody had any money, and President Roosevelt had a program called the New Deal, which was basically to help. They were work projects to try to get people working. And in this one part of Texas, West Texas, they had a spring and they made they built a giant swimming pool. So young men were working on these work projects, and there were other workshop projects throughout, like they built parks, they built dams, and they went to these camps. They were like kind of like man camps. They didn't have many for women at that time. And they were men who were between 18 and 25. And they were building things or working on public projects. And anyway, I've written a novel about a man camp in the 1930s. And it's in a remote part of Texas where there were these springs. And so they made this giant, it's a swimming pool, probably the size of a football field. It's huge. But it's completely, and I went there to visit it recently, a year ago, and it's completely, I don't know, there's nothing chlorinated about it. It's all natural springs. The swimming pool is natural springs. Anyway, the novel is about the relationship of all these guys in the camp, and that's what my book is about. So it's completely different than the work that I was doing before. And I did a lot of research about the time period, which was sort of inspired by my grandfather. But my grandfather went to school, went to the university in a very remote part of Texas called Sul Ross. And it's extremely remote from like a lot of the big cities. But anyway, I went to the library there, and the librarians gave me lots of oral interviews and material. And then I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. They built this swimming pool. That's interesting. And sort of, my novel kind of went from there. So the book is very different from the other work that I've, it's very, very different from the book about the books about Cairo.
Yeah. But it's good to be diverse. It's good to be diverse.
I mean, you have to try different. You have to, as an artist, you have to do different things. Otherwise, you repeat the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, plus you gain more exposure. I mean, you're going to be bringing in a whole new audience, with the new book that is completely different to all your other books, and bringing in that new audience now is also going to have an opportunity to get a copy or interact with all your other work that you've done before.
I hope so. I mean, it's more of a Texas-centered book, but maybe it's more appealing for an American audience.
You'd actually, be surprised. And, this is also coming from personal experience as well. When I first started releasing music, because I'm based in South Africa, you think, okay, wait, my audience or bulk of my audience is going to be, from South Africa. And it's not the case at all, and it hasn't been the case since day one. South Africa is like not even in the top 10 of my global listeners, whether it be with the music or whether it be with the podcast. Number one is the States. And then after that, there's a few European countries. But when it comes to like Africa as a whole, I don't have much like of a presence when it comes to my music and the podcast. So you would actually be surprised.
Yeah.
Like, you would think, okay, I'm going to put out this book. It's more for, an English audience, an American audience, or a European audience. Then you find out when you start looking at the data itself, sure, there's people in China or Japan or Australia that actually
Are
love my work
interested
more.
in your work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And, and it's all about the data itself, what the data is telling you. And it's mind-blowing, and exciting, and empowering at the same time. You just never know where your audience is going to be. One thing I tell like a lot. Yeah, sorry, you're saying.
No, I was just going to say, it just goes against the stereotype of what you think. That's interesting.
Yeah. You just never know. And then I tell a lot of creators also who are battling to, bring in more audience or more listeners or more, in your case, would be reads. But, I can say more, based on experience from a musical point of view, is like focus on the audience that are actually loving your work. Don't focus on the audience that you want to, love your work. If they don't dig it, they don't dig it. Is what it is. But focus on the audience that does. And, give them what they want, because at the end of the day, those are the ones that are actually going to be supporting your career. So I love the era that we're living in, at the moment, in this digital age, because prior to the digital age, it wasn't as easy to reach, a global audience.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's sort of like tastes, people's tastes are unpredictable maybe, or you don't know who's going to love sushi, or you don't know who's going to love oysters or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's very true. So your new book, so it's like, so final stages, it's completed, just get a publisher and that will be out to market.
Oh, you mean the one about Ball Murray, the one I just described?
Yeah.
I don't know. It hasn't been. I haven't been sending it out too long. It's only since August, so for me, that's not very long. I mean, if I'm sending it out for 3 years and I still don't have any bites, then I try something else.
Yeah, just never give up. Get it out there.
Yeah.
But I really do hope you find a publisher. I mean, you're doing fantastic work. I can see that you're passionate about what you do. You definitely would. You definitely would. I'm optimistic. I'm an optimistic person.
So. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. As long as you stay consistent, you'll get the result that you're looking for.
I hope so too. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's no problem at all. So, where can people find you online, find your book?
My book is on Amazon. Both of them. Shahrazad's Gift is on Amazon, and Confessions of a Knight Errant is also. It's partly. This is that one. This is Confessions of a Knight Errant, and I don't know. I'm doing it the wrong way. Anyway, Confessions of a Knight Errant is partly set. Yeah, partly set in Egypt during 2011 uprising, and it's a comedy. And the two guys go and work in a girls' camp in Central Texas. So one's Egyptian and one's an American, and it's kind of a fiasco. But It's a comedy and it's fun. And my website is Gretchen McCullough, fictionwriter.com.
Yeah. I actually sort of contradicts, what I say to like the nonfiction authors, because when it comes to the nonfiction authors, I always tell them there's this fine line between fiction and nonfiction, But
Oh, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's labeled nonfiction, but I feel there's just so much truth in, it's a story, basically nonfiction, you're telling a story, but there's a lot of truth in that story as well. But with fiction itself, also, I feel like I'm more fan of fiction. Like I love real life story, like your true life crime series. that's that's me.
Yeah, I think even if you're writing a nonfiction story, it still has to be crafted. I mean, it's not just recording what happened to you or whatever. I mean, it has to be, lots of things have to be left out. Lots of things have to be crafted. It's still an art, and it has a narrative form. And so some people think that it's easier, but I'm not so sure. I mean, it's still, you're still if you're writing about your own life, you're recreating dialogue which you can't remember, so you have to fill in the gaps, for a reader. So yeah, I agree with you that there is a fine line between fiction and nonfiction. I mean, you still have to craft a story.
Yeah. No, 100%. Completely agree with you that. Yeah, but here's what it is. Okay, but I mean, it's been a pleasure talking with you. You're doing phenomenal work. But by the way, so what do you teach exactly?
I teach freshman English, but I have also taught creative writing and travel writing and nonfiction writing, and also some literature courses, and so they let me teach some history. So I mean, teach a wide range of things.
Diverse. So for up and coming authors that listening to the podcast, what's the number one tip that you can give them on creative writing?
I think it would be to start small, and maybe try to publish locally, and then start, and it's also not, I had many things published, like small things published, before I started working on book projects. So I think start small, and it's not all or nothing. And I mean, as you know, small projects work towards bigger projects, but often you don't start with a big project. You start with smaller projects and get some confidence. And then, after you get confidence, you start taking bigger steps. But I think sometimes people think it's all or nothing, and they give up too quickly. So I think, and also not everything that you write is going to be publishable. You throw away a lot of stuff.
No, you're 100% correct in what you said there. People give up too quick. They want results overnight, but being a creator, that's not how it works.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
you just have
it doesn't
keep
work
creating.
That way.
Yeah, keep creating, keep trying. Doesn't matter how many times you fail, whether it be 100, whether it be 200, whether it be 1,000, you just keep creating, because that's what you are born to do. It's in your DNA, it's in your bloodline, it's ancestral. So you just keep going until you get, that big break.
Yeah, I think also you have to take feedback from other people. You have to be willing to take criticism, and that's hard. A lot of people don't want to take any criticism, as long as it's constructive criticism, you have to be open to like, oh, well, maybe it's not working in this, maybe it's not working and you have to figure out why it's not working. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. You got to ask people. Even if people don't give you feedback, you got to ask people,
Hmm.
because, a lot of people do get offended, you know, depending on how the emotional intelligence is actually at that present moment in time. But positive criticism is actually good because it gives you that guidance and which direction am I actually going? Am I going in the right direction? Where can, I get better? It's good to know your strengths, but it's just as good to know your weaknesses as well. So you can work on it to better yourself. So you're
Yeah, no,
100%. As a creator, you need to be able to take criticism and learn to work with it to better yourself.
yeah, no, I agree with you. You have to be able to respond to feedback. And of course, you also need to like be careful. I mean, you need to reach out to people who know what they're doing. I mean, who would be constructive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we live in a world where there is going to be like a lot of haters out there. We hating because we haven't done something phenomenal with our life. And just because I don't have that abilities, yet you really do, but you're just lazy to actually act on it. People will hate on you. But my thoughts about the matter is if people want to hate, let them hate. It shouldn't actually like stop your momentum in building the
Mm-hmm.
life that you want for yourself. And a lot of creators out there's creators that have made a lot of financial wealth based on their work, and there's ones that haven't. But the ones that haven't doesn't mean they haven't lived a joyful, happy life. They've done what they've loved doing, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
counts more than anything else as a creator. As long as you can do the work that you love doing most, that's all that matters. you
Yeah,
know
I mean, enjoyment is part of it. I mean, people are like, "Are you tortured when you write?" I'm like, "No, I'm having fun."
yeah, exactly.
It's not
There's the
fun if
word
you have to
there.
throw everything away, but I mean, I'm enjoying it when I'm making stuff. I really enjoy making things.
Yeah. It's like, I mentioned this it was Saturday. It was in a podcast I had on Saturday. There's a difference between happiness and joy. It's two different things. You know, if you're not enjoying the process, like if you're taking a shortcut, the conversation was like long cut and shortcut. So if you're taking the shortcut because you think, okay, if I take the shortcut, I'm going to get to that point, I'm going to be happy. No, you're not. You're not going to be happy. You're still going to be like unsatisfied. And you see that happening a lot. But if you enjoy the process, you know, go through all the challenges, the hardships, whatever it may be, you're going to find, that once you reach that goal, that actually enjoyed getting to that milestone.
Yeah, no, it's a process, and I mean, I always try to teach students that I don't always succeed, but that the process is extremely important in terms of their writing or whatever project they're working on, and that they should sort of be non-judgmental and when they're in that process and be open. I'm not sure
Yeah,
I always
yeah,
get that across, but I do try to teach them that.
yeah. I guess as the creator, you are your worst critic.
Mm.
That always comes up a lot. You'll always criticize your work. Pros and cons. Being your worst critic will bring on a lot of anxiety. In your life, but it will also help you to keep, making your work better and better and better and better. And you got to
Yeah,
keep
and
practicing.
you have
You
to
know.
be self-critical. You do have to be somewhat self-critical. You can't say like everything that I write is great because it's probably not.
And to be like honest with yourself. Be
Yes,
honest with
honesty
yourself.
is important. Honesty is really
Yeah,
important. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, it goes back, to the conversation I had with John Woodburn as well. Like we touched on that. And I mean, he's a publisher, he's a writer, he's on that side of the industry. And he was, like as I was saying, he's such a chill guy. He's like, send me a link to your music. So I did that. And he listened to one of the tracks I did in 2024, and 2023, and the track that I just pushed out in 2024. And, he could notice the difference, But what I attempt to do on my side is I bring in like a lot, like I bridge this gap between like, mainstream artists, independent artists. I provide opportunities for them with mainstream artists so they can build their career and build on that momentum. At times, I don't have the control over the vocals of the artists I do bring in because they haven't taken the time to actually, bring in a vocal coach or work on their vocals itself. But he shared positive criticism with me and I agreed with him. I agreed with him. But the point of the matter is, which was in our conversation, is that if you don't keep up with the consistency of, writing, or producing, or singing, you ain't going to get any better. You ain't going to get any better. You can't like write one piece of work and that's it, boom, stop.
No, it continues to like evolve. You have to keep doing it. It's like a musician. You have to keep practicing. You're not going to get better unless you keep practicing and trying different things.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, and you will learn as you move along. But yeah, Gretchen, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. It was like a really interesting conversation. Enjoyed it.
Same here. All the best with your current book, with your previous books, and with the one that you're hoping to get published. I'll be on the lookout for that. Please let me know once you do get a publisher and be like, yo, kiddo, this book is going to come out. This book is going to come out, Yeah, no, I'm all about promotion, I'm all about promotion. Like what I do also after the podcast is finally released and it's out there, I do, share the cover of the book as well, wherever I can, My taking is I don't focus on vanity metrics, but if I can get one more person or 100 more to actually go and check it out, whether it's going and listening to a track or checking who Gretchen actually is and a book itself, it's 1 or 100 more than I had yesterday. So
that's true. Absolutely. Yeah.
Just getting the word out there. So thank you for your time. At least this is one conversation I've had ever where we're in the same time zone.
Yeah. I know. I know. It's incredible. I get these podcasts and I'm like, oh gosh, first thing I do is type in like, what time is it in this compared to Egypt? And try to figure out when we can meet. That's great.
But I mean, but I enjoy it as well. I mean, my energy levels are the same. My energy levels, like I prepare for it, bulk of it. Like the one I have tomorrow will be like in Oregon, it'll be 9 a.m. So it's like 8 p.m. here, but the energy levels are the same. We keep it going. And like the Tuesday one goes up to like, can go from 1.5 hours to 2 hours, but I'm still there, like the podcast I had on Saturday was 3 hours long. It was 3 hours, 20 minutes. That's how long that conversation was.
Wow. Did you edit it or not?
Sorry?
Did you edit it?
No. So what I do is I love organic. I love organic. So if the conversation is 3 hours, I am posting 3 hours because each and every single second of the conversation, I want people to listen to because there's value in it. There's value in it. So I really do edits. There's a lot of podcasters out there, and I notice it in their videos how they skip. You can actually see the skipping point. I'm not like that. I am 100% organic when it comes to the show. So whether it's an hour long, 2 hours long, 3 hours long, I'm posting it. Whether there's errors in the podcast, I want people to see that because I also want up and coming creators to realize one thing is that no matter how far up the ladder we actually are, we are just as human as you are. We do make mistakes. There is errors. We do face challenges. There is setbacks, all types of setbacks. We do face it. So I want to keep it real instead of fake. Whereas there's podcasters out there who want to continue, engaging with the audience, thinking that they're all perfect, but I know that they're not. And for me, I feel it's quite selfish because even though you may be sharing great content, look, not all are the same. Not all. There's a good percentage that, yes, do edit, but they're sharing great value. But there's some out there who are just attempting to just monetize for themselves. But they need to show, I want to show people the weaknesses as well of being a creator. Because you may be in a situation currently at this present moment in time where putting your first short story together or your first blog together or your first novel together, and you're thinking, but look at Gretchen, she's never faced these challenges that I'm facing. She's perfect. She has it all figured out. But it's not the case at all. At this present time, Gretchen at the moment has a new book. She's struggling to find a publisher.
Sorry, starting from scratch again. Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So if you're an author right out there now and you're listening to the podcast and you can't find a publisher, Gretchen, who has published now several books, is in the same situation as you. But she's pushing on. She's pushing on. And she's going to get that publisher. So you should also push on. That's what, I'm about.
That's great.
Yeah. Now, but thank you for taking the time to come on. And I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you all the best. I am sure you will find your publisher. As I said, I'm optimistic. You will find your publisher. And all the best for all your, with your teaching, with your writing. And keep going. Keep going.
Thank you. You're very dynamic.
Sorry?
I said you're very dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed authors that are in their 70s and 80s, and they are still going at it. They got projects lined up for 2025, and I'm like, yo, this is what we do. This is what we do as creators. We don't stop until the last day.
Yeah, that's it. You have to keep working. Yeah, that's it. And that's what keeps them going, probably.
Exactly. The only thing that keeps them going, it's the only thing that keeps any of us going, So I love it when I get this email saying, yo, got a guest for you. I'm like, yes, let's do it, or let's, was the moment I get my next track out, let's work on the next one. We just have to keep pushing, because this is just what we do. Whether people are listening or reading or not, this is what we do. Let's keep creating. Let's keep innovating. So we are.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. But thank you for your time. And
yes, thank you.
Yeah. And hopefully one day when I do make it to Egypt, I run into you somewhere, somehow on the destination list.
Well, keep in touch. I'll probably still be here.
Yeah, thanks, Gretchen. It's been a great chat. You're a phenomenal person.
Thank you.
Love what you're doing. And yeah, we'll chat soon. And I will send the links out once the episode is up.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.